The glass garden cloche, most of us are familiar with these cloches, but generally being used for a purpose which they weren't really intended. The original glass cloches were invented by an Italian glassblower in 1648, and the purpose was to nurture and coddle young seedlings and plants for nursery growers who wanted to get an early start on the growing season. All sizes. This is the dollhouse size. These were used primarily in 19th century France for market gardens to protect tender young plants from the cold and to coddle young seedlings and nurture them to their full growth. Made of glass and shaped like a bell, they took on the name cloche, which is French for bell. Pronounced cloche in the US as well, pronounced cloche in the UK, but during the colonial times, during the French and Indian Wars, the Americans did not want to use the French word, and so they took on the name of bell jars. I kind of like bell jar better. That cloche is pretty. Bell jars warm the soil, they protect the plant from the wind and the cold, and they expedite root growth. They're beautiful and old-fashioned too. But they don't just come in glass now. They come in many different styles and for many different purposes, because some cloches are not used to protect young plants from the cold. They're used to protect plants from the shade, such as these straw cloches here. Actually, they're not made of straw. They're made of some kind of weaving. I just found them at a garden center and they were 50% off. I thought they were so interesting. They're very tall and skinny, and I'm almost thinking they are for protecting young trees that you just put in, because they had some that were even taller than these. So some of your cloches are for nurturing young and tender plants. Some are for protecting them from the weather and the freezing temperatures, and some of them are to protect your plants from nibbling critters. During the Victorian period, another type of cloche became popular, and these were called hand panes, and they were made of little pieces of glass, triangles and squares, which were held together with cast iron or any sort of metal that would adhere them together, and they were in effect little mini greenhouses, which were portable and could be moved from place to place. They were very attractive in the Victorian garden, and basically they were for the home gardener or the hobby gardener. This one obviously has lost all its glass and I need to replace it. But they were also very convenient when some of them you were able to actually, on a hot day, you could open the lid, let in a little air, close it again, and when you didn't need it in that particular spot anymore, you could move this, because it has a handle, from place to place in your garden. Hand panes. Really sweet. Now here's one of the hand panes, and the way you can use this is you can warm up your soil about 2 weeks before you're ready to put in seedlings or transplants. You set it over the soil. It's going to actually warm the soil underneath, and when that soil is nice and warm, you can put in your seeds or your seedlings, and you can plant them a lot earlier than you normally would have, and just leave this in place until it gets nice and warm outside. You can lift it up to little air in, or remove it entirely. Thomas Jefferson used hundreds and hundreds of hand-blown cloches and bell jars in his vegetable garden in Mount Vernon. But for most people, these hand-blown bell jars were just not easily found or easily affordable. So for the average gardener who couldn't find this particular item, much needed item and much desired item, it was suggested in an 1879 garden periodical called Vic's Monthly Magazine that gardeners who couldn't find a commercial cloche, such as bell jars and hand glasses, were advised to use their imagination. And I quote, "The clever amateur will adapt the tumbler, the broken fruit jar, the cracked fish globe, or other piece of glassware to the service." And so it's in that spirit that I would like to improvise using a few easily found glass items to make your own bell jars and your own cloches for your garden, according to your style. Here's a lovely little grouping of glass cloches that I made using vases. They have a nice diameter there on the bottom. The only thing I'm not thrilled about is they're a little bit lightweight glass, and I think if I were to do it again I'd find something a little heavier, but I like the shape of these because they're more of the dome shape, the traditional bell or dome shape. And then for my knobs, I've taken some antique porcelain doorknobs, and I'm using E6000 glue to glue these on the top. Or you could use silicone, and as you can see, that holds pretty well. It's been this one's been put together for about 3 weeks. So these are attractive looking. I think they'd be lovely in the garden to use in the interim when your seedlings are just brand new and you're trying to protect them from the weather or the frost, or maybe some nice new lettuces that you need to have protected. So I think they're pretty. They look lovely. They look lovely all in a row, and they're inexpensive to make. And they do have the look of the original 18th century cloche. Now here we have an ordinary glass canister, which is really nice, thick glass. I trust this glass a lot more than I do these others. It's got a great diameter here. It's heavy. You just flip it upside down and put it on top of your plants. You could use a pickle jar. You could use anything, really, but I like these because they have the lids. You could put the lid aside and use it later on as its original purpose, as a canister, but I'm going to use some silicone and glue that onto the top and have a permanent cloche. They also come in different sizes. They come in bigger sizes than this and smaller. Here's one where I actually dropped the lid and it broke, but I was able to save the knob. So here's the knob, glued on with silicone. Not a very tidy job, but it serves its purpose, and you have a different size. Here you have a lovely little rose bowl I should say, which would be perfect as well. Lightweight. Put it over your little seedling. You could put a knob on top or not. You don't need to. The idea is to get several of the same kind, which would make a really nice arrangement, which would look lovely in your potager, but also serve a purpose. And then my favorite are just little canning jars, especially the ones that are the blues and the greens. This is the smallest size you can get. I think it's a half a pint, or is it a pint? I'm not sure. Anyway, flop it upside down, put it on top of your plant. Now when you use these, they're not going to get any airflow, and you're going to need some airflow, so you're going to take a little stone, a little flat stone, and you're going to set that on top of the stone in your garden to get a little bit of airflow underneath so that your plants don't suffocate. If it gets hot outside, you're only going to do that if the sun is out beating down on those cloches, because you don't want to burn them up. And here we have little cabbages and kale protected from little nibblers, which would be rabbits or chickens that get in the garden, or in my case peacocks, which are pretty much not able to get into this garden anymore. But nevertheless, something has been chewing on these before I put these lovely little, believe it or not, these are little waste baskets. They're little waste baskets that cost $1 a piece. They look like they're metal. They're actually plastic, which is really a better idea because they won't rust. So when you're done with these, you just stack them on top of each other and store them away. And I think, for the fact that they're waste baskets, I think they look rather nice here in the garden. Now this is an example of a great protector, plant protectors I call them, but they're actually could be used as cloches. They're actually hanging baskets for making hanging baskets. I buy these by the dozen from a little co-op that we have nearby, and I place them, and have been doing this for years, over the top of my plants to protect them from digging chickens. Our free-range chickens have a tendency to go around, they see some fresh soil and they just have to dig it all the way around the plant, and this prevents that from happening. It's just protecting your plant from diggers. And then I secure it in the ground with little horseshoe shapes of wire. So these are absolutely great. They last quite a long time. They do end up getting quite rusty after a while, but they last for many years, and they're very, very convenient and easy to find. Here's another way you can use these baskets, hanging basket cloches, is if you have something that likes to be nibbled on by certain people, and in this case I am talking about a poisonous plant which is a foxglove, but I've discovered that my ducks like to chew on them. It doesn't affect them in the least, but this keeps them from chewing on it. I've just covered that wire cloche or hanging basket. To me it's a cloche. I've covered it with chicken wire. They can't get their little bills in there, and it really protects these from being chewed on until they get tall enough that the ducks won't bother them anymore. But as long as we're here in the foxglove bed, I want to tell you how pleased I am with these foxgloves that I actually grew from seed in a tray last year, and then I transplanted them into the garden in late summer. They went through the entire winter without a problem. In fact, they have just grown by leaps and bounds. They're just so healthy and beautiful right now. Just wanted to let you know that this is a great cold weather seed and plant that really enjoys. I mean, they've been in the sun and they've been in the freezing. I mean, they've been in the snow. They've been in the freezing rain. They've been in temperatures below 10 degrees, and they've done just great. So that would be something you would want to plant late in the season and let it overwinter right in your garden. Here's a very attractive hanging basket used as a protective cloche. I wouldn't mind seeing a row of those covering up lettuces in a garden. Another instant cloche if you need it for a sudden freeze that you're going to get that night. Just grab one of your terracotta pots, pop it over your plant that you're worried about. You wouldn't be worried about these, of course. Pop it over your plant and protect it during the freeze. And there you got a nice little terracotta cloche. So here are some cloches that I made out of green wood. They're rather large ones, and the purpose of these is to protect some new plants I'm going to be putting in from digging chickens. I have free-range chickens that love to dig around my plants, especially if the soil is nice and fresh, and they really will destroy the plants I put in. And I'm expecting to be putting in some peonies here very soon, and I wanted to have about 5 of these ready to go. So these are the first 2 I made, and if you're interested in learning how to make these, I did a video on it. Let me know in the comments. It will be the video right after this one if you want to see it. So in the meantime, come up with some good ideas for your glass garden cloches and let me know what you come up with. I'd be very interested to hear it. In the meantime, from Hopalong Hollow, this is Jerry.